Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar from Wi-Fi 6 to 7, The Journey to the Next Wireless Frontier, sponsored by Zyxel Communications. Before we begin, I will cover a few housekeeping items. On the left-hand side of your screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, please type your question into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get an answer to you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow Help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the blue Resource List widget. And near the end of today's presentation, please take 1 minute to complete the survey that's open on your screen. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I would now like to turn over the event to Heavy Readings Analyst at Large, Simon Stanley.
Hello, and welcome from me as well. And I'm joined today by Andrew Queller, who is Product Marketing Manager for Zyxel Communications. Andrew, perhaps you could just tell us a little about yourself and also Zyxel Communications.
Absolutely. Thank you, Simon. So I'm Andrew. I'm the, as Simon said, Product Marketing Manager here at Zyxel. I've spent quite some time here at Zyxel in various different roles, and this one is the latest. I hope we all know who Zyxel is at this point. We started way back. We actually celebrated our 35th year here in the United States this past summer, starting way back with the early dial-up days, big presence with DSL, and of course we've expanded our portfolio to include managed Wi-Fi solutions up to the latest Wi-Fi 7, and we have a vast portfolio of pretty much a wide variety of all the networking devices you need.
Okay, great, thank you. So for today's presentation, Andrew will start with a look at the history of Wi-Fi and particularly focusing in on the challenges and the continuous Wi-Fi evolution that we've seen. Andrew will continue with an overview of the benefits delivered by Wi-Fi 6 and 6E before going on to look at what Wi-Fi 7 is bringing. Andrew will finish with a look at key approaches to managing subscriber Wi-Fi. During the webinar, there'll be 2 polling questions, and at the end, there'll be a Q&A session. And I do encourage you to take part in the polls and also send in any questions you have for Andrew as we go through. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Andrew.
Great, thank you. All right, so like Simon mentioned, we're going to talk a whole lot about Wi-Fi today. And I'll get started here with jumping off slide. Now, Wi-Fi is the internet to most of our subscribers, to most everyone. That's commonly what they see as the internet. You know, a lot of it comes down to education, which is definitely a challenge when it comes to discussing with our subscribers that we provide services to. But for the most part, they want that Wi-Fi always on, always connected, so that whenever they need to do something, it's there and available. You know, there is that disconnect where in the event of a power outage, of course, the Wi-Fi goes out completely. Whereas in the event of an internet outage, that Wi-Fi is still on, broadcasting. They're connected, they just can't go anywhere. So little distinction there. So as I talk a bit more about the evolution of Wi-Fi, you know, how far we've gone, where we've come, it's not perfect. It's definitely working towards trending that way. But in general, you know, there's still ways to go to really compete and go up against that wired line speed, that hardwired connection that is, of course, always much more reliable. So here we'll talk a bit about more of the challenges coming up. But, you know, this is constantly fluid, ever evolving. You know, we just wrapped and certified Wi-Fi 7 at the start of the year, and there's already talks about the next generation of Wi-Fi coming up. So hopefully we still have some time there to deploy and utilize Wi-Fi 7, but you know, it's something that's continuing to evolve and move forward to ensure that we can meet the growing demands as the way everyone uses Wi-Fi changes. So here is just a brief example, kind of the way things have changed in the look, design, the feel of wireless devices. In the very early days, I'm pretty sure everyone's very familiar with that old router with the bunny ears. Um, Pretty much everyone had that was able to do a whole lot and really expand the life out of there. But things progressed, things grew. We added the dual band capabilities with Wi-Fi 5. I'm sorry, Wi-Fi 5, 5 gigahertz specifically, not only just the 2.4 gigahertz. And now, of course, we're progressing, and it included the 6 gigahertz band as well. One note here, as you can see, we kind of see the antennas externally, and then as we progress further, a lot of that is internalized. A lot of smart antenna technologies come about where we don't have to have those positioned properly on the outside. Now everything's internalized and can adapt to different situations, different scenarios as well. But we've done a lot of work to really improve that and make a much, I'd say, sleeker design when it comes to the Wi-Fi routers. And of course, the technology included is evolving as well. Okay. So a bit about the challenges. This one is always, unfortunately, is a very common issue. Challenges with coverage, reaching and covering the whole home, what we would refer to in the past, whole home Wi-Fi, making sure that we blanket every corner. And this became really important, especially out of everyone during lockdown, when we weren't allowed to kind of leave the house, and we were still trying to utilize and work from home, being able to stream, learn remotely from all areas of the home. So having coverage throughout the home became very important, not only inside the home, but also it's becoming more in demand, let's say, outside of the home as well, to be able to roam about your property while maintaining that Wi-Fi connection. The challenges with coverage aren't only related to distance. There are a variety of other factors that come into play. When it comes down to it, sometimes even the materials used in the home build, we see a lot of, let's say, cost-effective homes coming about where they're able to, well, if they're lining walls, with, let's say, chicken wire or something like that, which isn't always great for wireless throughput and wireless communication, pretty much trapping that signal inside. So not only the issue with home builds, but even a variety of objects in the home, major appliances can damper that wireless signal. That's where things like placement, where the wireless routers or extenders, which I'll talk about next, are being placed. These types of things become very important when we want to maximize the coverage as well as the overall experience for that end user. So to deal with some of these challenges, of course, we have developed in the past, or I'm sorry, it's also constantly evolving, is a mesh technology. And that's where we get in the question where, will a router do? Do we need an extender? Will one work to cover the entire area reliably, a quality connection, or do we need to add that second, third, fourth extender? And mesh technology has also evolved in the early days. Even before it was, I believe, referred to as mesh, we had AP roaming, things like that, where we could have that kind of that transition from one connection to another. And the goal was to make it as seamlessly as possible so that the user does not notice that drop in connection and reconnection. And that's what's really expanded when it comes to mesh technology with the later Wi-Fi generations, Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and 7. But overall, what mesh brings us is, again, not only that coverage, a little extra flexibility, but with the later Wi-Fi generations, it's easier to deploy. to add an extra node, to add that extender. We have a lot more flexibility when it comes to that. There are also a variety of other back-end technologies that are being developed and improved there as well, which I'll get into in a moment. Okay. So let's just give you an idea roughly of, when we want to look at expanding that coverage, adding extenders. The average high-powered gateway today can cover about 2,000 square feet. That's a rough estimate, of course, because not every home is identical, not every layout is identical. So just give you a general ballpark idea. But when it comes to the newer technologies, like we'll talk about with Wi-Fi 6 and 7, it's less of a worry to have to, when deploying these extenders, nodes, whatever you want to call them, because the technology has developed where we don't need to have a hub and spoke where every extender has to talk back to that primary gateway, whereas now we can daisy chain these devices and when we deploy them, and the system now is able to determine the best path out so that it's a more reliable. We're not as concerned, I mean, it is still a concern, but not as concerned with latency when deploying extenders in this fashion. So that's when we get into a bit of the back-end technologies of the wireless routers with mesh technology. Really, what we're doing here is not only capturing information about the wireless clients, about what's connected, what they're doing on the network. We're also capturing information about the airspace around it, whether there's free airspace, if there's any interference, so that the system is able to make changes on the fly, make adjustments, and improve, again, that's the overall goal, is to improve the experience for all of the clients that are connected. So along those lines of the intelligence that's built into the routers nowadays, some of the key features that we do see come about are your load balancing, your AP steering, roaming, things like that, so that as your end user is moving around the home, moving around between devices, they have that seamless experience throughout. And these, again, are just things that are constantly evolving, becoming better, and really taking us forward when it comes to wireless deployment. All right. Before I jump into more about the technology, let's kick off a poll.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And as Andrew said, we come to the first of our two polls. And the question we'd like to ask you is, which Wi-Fi technology do you offer to your subscribers? We've given you 4 options. Please pick one or more of the options, depending on what's relevant. So the options are Wi-Fi 5 solution, Wi-Fi 6 or 6E, exploring Wi-Fi 7 solutions, or none. Our subscribers bring their own gateway. So if you could just make your selections on that poll, and then we'll go to the results very shortly. I'll just give you a few moments to do that. So you can see we've got some results coming in. So just, if you haven't already voted, then please do so. And we'll go to those results in a minute. Okay, so I'm now going to push those results up onto the screen. They should be coming up now. There we go. So we've got roughly 70% going for Wi-Fi 6 or 6E, 36% on Wi-Fi 5, and 20% exploring Wi-Fi 7, and then just under 5% saying our subscribers bring their own gateway. I'm just wondering, Andrew, is that what you're sort of seeing in general in the market?
Absolutely. I think for the most part, there were some those hesitant, I'd say, to jump into Wi-Fi 6 or 6E and wait for what's coming next with Wi-Fi 7. So we see a lot of operators still offering a Wi-Fi 5 solution because, it still works. It's still, for lack of a better term, good enough. But we have definitely seen many providers already that are taking advantage of Wi-Fi 6E and that 6 gigahertz band to offer a little something extra compared to other providers as well.
Okay, great. Right, well, let's go on to the next slide. So I'm going to hand back to Andrew again.
Great, thank you. Okay, yeah, thank you everyone for participating in that. It just gives us a good idea of kind of where everyone's at while I continue on. So let's get into Wi-Fi 6, which is obviously the, I'd say more of the primetime Wi-Fi offering that we've seen in the past couple of years, but also focus here on what Wi-Fi 6 brings us. Wi-Fi 6, the goal here was efficiency, improving the overall experience, again, for all of the wireless clients that are connected. Wi-Fi 6 brought us 4 times the speed compared to Wi-Fi 5 and increased the capacity of the amount of connected devices, which is huge in terms of the IoT boom that we've seen, where there is Wi-Fi in everything. And even though it may not require a whole lot of bandwidth, it's something that's always on, always connected, always sending some type of data. Again, it may not be high bandwidth, but it is a connected device, and in previous generations could negatively impact the wireless connection. But with Wi-Fi 6, we can take that in stride, which I'll talk about shortly after as well. Wi-Fi 6 is also lower in latency. New airtime techniques are available and constantly being evolved as well, being improved upon from the previous generation of Wi-Fi 5. And of course, we're improving that again with Wi-Fi 7. One other key feature with Wi-Fi 6 that it brings us is target wake time, which improves the battery life of mobile devices, tablets, things like that, so that communication isn't sent unnecessarily. Those devices are only woken up when they need to be, when they need to communicate back to the main router, something like that. So again, just something to help with the overall efficiency of the wireless network. So with Wi-Fi 6, we also branch out and bring in Wi-Fi 6E. Not a huge fan of the E. Maybe we could have made it Wi-Fi 6.5. But in any case, the Wi-Fi 6E is the 6th generation extended into 6 gigahertz. So this is where we get the true tri-band routers and that third band capability. So as many of us know, or I hope we're aware, 2.4 and 5 gigahertz are, well, 2.4 is definitely congested. 5 gigahertz is definitely getting there in terms of the amount of connected devices utilizing that 5 gigahertz spectrum. So opening up that 6 gigahertz band is giving us something more to alleviate that congestion interference that exists on the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So Wi-Fi 6E, what is it? So expanding into that 6 gigahertz band, you can see the breakdown here. Obviously, the 2.4 gigahertz at the top has 3 non-overlapping channels that we can utilize. Not a whole lot to work with, especially in terms of connected devices that are available and the amount of wireless APs, routers, extenders that are out there in the wild, let's say. So not a whole lot to work with, but of course does offer us the longest distance in terms of coverage. Taking a step down to the middle is the 5 gigahertz, where we see, we increase those channels. We have wider channels, so we have that higher bandwidth, higher throughput available, but we still don't have as many compared to the 6 gigahertz non-overlapping channels that we can utilize. So we're running up against that as well in 5 gigahertz as far as, hitting kind of the congestion limits, let's say. And then down below, we see the 6 gigahertz being introduced. Down at the bottom, we have those much wider channels and more of them available. So we have more to work with, especially in MDU, apartment complex type deployments. So I mean, we still have to worry about it a little bit, but we don't have to worry about it as much when it comes to interference and congestion, introducing that 6 gigahertz spectrum. So a whole lot more to work with, a wide variety of channels, channel widths to work with as well. Really, Wi-Fi 6E was pretty much getting us ready for Wi-Fi 7, introducing us to that 6 gigahertz radio. Okay, just quick side-by-side key differences. So Wi-Fi 6, 6E specifically, we're adding additional wider channels, much more of those lower width channels as well, if we use a lower bandwidth channel. And of course, introducing us to that 6 gigahertz spectrum. There is a note there about Wi-Fi 6E not being backwards compatible. It's a bit of an odd area because it's the simple fact that a lot of our devices that we already have or had when Wi-Fi 6E was introduced simply don't have a 6 gigahertz radio included. So, you know, it's more of a hardware limitation. So we'd have to adopt new devices, new phones, new tablets, or the easier route with our laptops is a new wireless card, just swapping that in that has the support and capability to communicate on the 6 gigahertz radio as well. Okay, so yeah, this is where we see, again, the true tri-band routers. So 3 separate radios that don't interfere with one another, the 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. In the past, we have seen some devices come to market where they do offer tri-band support, but it's 2 5 gigahertz radios. You know, usually one for front haul, one for back haul to connect back to extenders. But now with Wi-Fi 6E, we have 3 completely independent radios available, true tri-band routers. Now, for the most part, what we're kind of seeing as far as Wi-Fi 6E deployment, we're seeing that 6 gigahertz band being used for backhaul. As in the home, it's not congested. It alleviates that stress off of the 5 gigahertz that in the past with dual band routers did double duty, where it was that 5 gig radio was doing front haul and back haul. So introducing that third band with 6 gigahertz kind of offloads that as well, so that the 5 gigahertz can focus just on the wireless clients and the experience for those devices. So we're seeing, you know, the 6 gigahertz again as a backhaul to provide a larger pipe, a larger communication between the routers and extenders. So when we get into Wi-Fi 6E and the 6 gigahertz spectrum, what can we expect? What can we see? Of course, there's more spectrum to work with, wider channels, less congested. These are all, you know, great benefits, great things that it's bringing. But on the, I guess, subscriber side, what they can actually see, gigabit speeds to their mobile devices, the lower latency, and of course, higher capacity, more connected devices being added to that. But of course, I think the one that most end users are usually fixated with is, of course, the speed testing, checking those wireless speeds on the 6 gigahertz spectrum and seeing it achieve over a gig. It's definitely something. All right, so let's dive a little bit more into the Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. So up to 4 times the capacity, I believe right now with the Wi-Fi 6 technology and capabilities, you know, we're able to connect upwards of 100 wireless devices at the same time. So not only increasing the capacity, but also being able to communicate with all of those devices pretty much at the same time goes back to the overall efficiency that Wi-Fi 6 and 6E brings. So here's a quick slide on the backwards compatibility of Wi-Fi 6, 6E. Of course, if the device does not have a 6 gigahertz radio, it's not going to be compatible with the 6 gigahertz spectrum. But in terms of backwards compatibility with legacy Wi-Fi 3, 4, 5 devices, when we move to a Wi-Fi 6 router, we can handle those devices at their highest speed, even though it's much lower than the existing Wi-Fi 6 devices. And it really goes, again, to the efficiency, because in the past, when we'd onboard, let's say, a Wi-Fi 5 router, we'd onboard a legacy Wi-Fi 3 or 4 device, the entire network would drop down to communicate at its highest capability. So it kind of, really brings down the entire network to operate its level. But with Wi-Fi 6 and beyond, we can operate at those low levels as well as the newer, higher capable levels. So again, all goes back into being more efficient and really improving the experience, again, for all of the wireless clients connected. Okay. The aggregation of the Wi-Fi clients, this is more related to being able to track all the devices as they move about the home. I know we have several now that are static, like our thermostats, light bulbs, things like that. But there are still a variety of laptops, tablets, mobile phones moving about the area, moving around. So we can think of it like a beehive. The router's in the center, the bees all buzzing around, and we're able to communicate and track all of those bees as they move about the hive. So again, more into that efficiency. So side by side, Wi-Fi 5, 6, 6E, even in some cases just outside of the bandwidth changes. If you have a single device, there's not a whole lot of difference when it's just one device on that wireless network. But where we really start to see the improvements and the changes is a fully loaded network, which is becoming pretty typical of the average home, where there's upwards of 30, 40 wireless connected devices on the network. Okay, so real briefly, I will try to keep this as brief as possible. Some of the back-end technologies that Wi-Fi 6 brings and builds upon, and some of these are continuing to be built upon with Wi-Fi 7 technology as well. So let's see, starting in the top left, MU-MIMO, multi-user, multi-input, multi-output. In the past, with Wi-Fi 5 as the example, we'd be able to communicate with one device at a time. And then we made improvements so we're able to communicate with 4 devices at a time, but only in one direction. With Wi-Fi 6, we've improved upon that, and we can communicate with several devices at the same time in both directions. So again, going back into that overall efficiency. And that's really the goal with all of these, with most of these technologies that are being developed. So over to the next one is OFDMA. We can think of this one as a jumbo jet, including multiple streams of services and delivering it more efficiently. And in the past, having separate streams to deliver that, takes up more time, takes up more airspace. So with OFDMA and Wi-Fi 6 technology, we see that improvement of overall handling that communication and the various different traffic types, just overall improvements. Let's see, bottom left, QAM. This is something that is featured in Wi-Fi 7 as well, but the idea here is that we're packing more traffic into those signals, into that connection, really expanding the highway so that we can reach those higher throughput capabilities and things like that. And then in the bottom right, is beamforming or active beamforming, and that's what I was just speaking on in regards to the hive and the bees. So in the past, we'd have to kind of broadcast and send out, hey, where are you? I need to send this to you. Whereas now we know where everyone is and we can send things more efficiently. And that's what it's all about with Wi-Fi 6. So I think before we jump into Wi-Fi 7, just give you an idea of what Wi-Fi 6E is offering and what we can see the differences, the key differences in terms of throughput, range, and latency. Range is not quite there yet. All of these 6 gigahertz deployments right now are rated for low power indoor. So not quite as much coverage as we'd like just yet, but that is also something that is evolving, and we are working towards going full power there as well. The big one, of course, with the 6 gigahertz is throughput. So you see that obviously we're pretty much doubling the wireless throughput speed capability. And then we're bringing down the latency, which is very important moving forward with a lot of the cloud, AR, VR gaming, things like that are coming to market. Okay. So now that we've wrapped Wi-Fi 6, we'll get into a bit about Wi-Fi 7. So Wi-Fi 7 certification came down in January. That devices started, having that nice Wi-Fi Alliance logo on it, things like that, and approvals coming down that way. And surprisingly, it is kind of on target. We waited quite a while for Wi-Fi 6 to get ratified. A lot of obstacles there, but with Wi-Fi 7, it seems like things went a bit smoother. And now here we are today offering Wi-Fi 7. I know we've seen quite a bit on the market already in the past year, I'd say, off-the-shelf products being offered. But I'd say not full-featured Wi-Fi 7 just yet. And of course, that's what I'll be discussing next is, what Wi-Fi 7 brings us and what improvements we're seeing there as well. So here's just a quick snapshot side by side, what's Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7 and the key differences. So I think some of the bigger ones, obviously supporting more data streams is very important, but the big game changer, I'd say, is multi-link operation right there in the middle. So not only are we promising, Wi-Fi speeds over 40 gigs over the Wi-Fi, but multi-link operation and MLO is definitely something new, something that's going to go a long way in not only helping throughput, but also reducing latency, as well as what is it? Reliability. That's the word I'm looking for. Reliability. So we're able to send traffic on multiple bands at the same time. So if it doesn't make it on one band, there's potential it could make it on another band. So we're definitely increasing reliability here. But with Wi-Fi 7, a big one is, of course, that wireless throughput capability. I think that's a huge selling point, especially on the marketing side of things, to really push it out there. That we're able to achieve much, much higher throughput, going beyond, the 1 gig port offerings that are available on most devices. And it's going to be key moving forward as we see more providers offering 8, 10 gig services to their subscribers. So having a device that can actually achieve some of these things, or, better than that 1 gig wired offering, is definitely going to be a huge selling point. But again, we're increasing that data rate, we're increasing the network capacity, we're expanding on the 6 gigahertz spectrum, wider channels. Well, let's get into it. Okay, so some of the key features of Wi-Fi 7, the real big ones is the increased capacity on the channel width, where you're doubling those up to 320 megahertz. So that's how we're able to achieve those higher throughput rates, and we see that higher bandwidth to devices. QAM is also being improved here. We're, again, expanding those highways, making sure we can pump more traffic through it. The big key difference maker, multi-link operation, which I'll get into in just a moment, and multi-RU puncturing, which is a bit of a more advanced technology. I won't get into it too much here, but it is related to essentially not wasting the entire channel width. So we're able to dynamically utilize extra parts of the channel that we were not able to in the past with Wi-Fi 6. So just something a bit extra. Okay, So yes, super wide channels with Wi-Fi 7, 320 megahertz. Obviously, we're seeing that double from Wi-Fi 5, 6, and now to 7 each time. And in terms of what we actually get and what we can see as far as throughput, we're doubling that as well. So at least in some preliminary testing, we're seeing on the 6 gigahertz band with a 320 megahertz wide channel, up to 3 gigs up and down to a device. Of course, that device has to support 320 megahertz as well. And that is key moving forward is with Wi-Fi 7 is that the client devices have to be able to utilize and support these new features. Okay, and just another visual of QAM, how we're improving it from Wi-Fi 5 to 6, 6E, and now to 7. So you see that capacity double increasing throughput across the board. So very important, very key. But more of back-end technologies that aren't absolutely necessary to know, but just a good idea to have an understanding of. Okay, so this is the big one with Wi-Fi 7. Wi-Fi 6 was about efficiency. Wi-Fi 7 is about ultra-high throughput, but it is also include some more efficient items as well. So even things like the target wake time are being improved with Wi-Fi 7 as well. But this key feature here, multi-link operation or MLO, is it's very interesting in what it's going to be able to bring us. So obviously, in the past, it was single link operation, where your mobile device could only operate on one band or the other. With Wi-Fi 7 and multi-link operation, we're able to, again, the client device needs to support this as well, which I think is going to be another challenge in itself. But anyways, the idea here is to combine or aggregate. You can aggregate the 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz into one large pipe, so we can achieve higher bandwidth speeds. And that's where we see these over 10 gig capabilities with multi-link operation enabled. But so not only is it going to help in terms of throughput, increased capacity there, but also reliability, because we can send the same data on 3 separate bands. So increasing that reliability and overall efficiency of communication back to the routers. The 2.4 doesn't add a whole lot in terms of throughput, really, but it is capable of being combined into that as well with multi-link operation. It's also going to help us in terms of latency, because if we're sending on all 3 bands at the same time, let's say one is impacted, the other band may reach there first. So we're adding to that reliability and that overall experience for the end user. In the future, when more devices are able to support it, I think, we're going to see a lot more satisfaction when it comes to roaming as well, moving about the home. It's just going to create a generally a better experience for the clients that can support it. And before I move on, I think that's going to be, I'd say one of the newer challenges moving forward. Obviously, multi-link operation is a part of the Wi-Fi 7 standard. But I think when it comes to anything new, we're going to see different interpretations between vendors, where certain clients may choose to utilize it this way or that way, and the router may not like that or want to play nice with that. It's going to be interesting to see moving forward as, again, we have more adoption, how that's really going to play out in terms of the variety of devices that are going to be available on the market. Unfortunately, anyways, moving forward, let's talk a bit about client adoption with Wi-Fi 7. So obviously this year we're not anticipating too much. We're almost at the end of the year here, but more and more fully featured Wi-Fi 7 devices are coming to market now. There are a variety of wireless chipsets that are being available, tested. I need to update this slide because the iPhone is the iPhone 16. I believe the entire series will bring Wi-Fi 7 support. So that's good and bad. It's good in terms of Wi-Fi 7, having that capability, having that support. The downside being it's going to bring some questions to those early adopters. Why aren't they connecting at Wi-Fi 7 speeds if they're using a Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 5 gateway, right? The other downside is that they will not support 320 megahertz channels, the channel width. They'll still be operating at 160 megahertz. So in terms of throughput, they won't be able to achieve the highest capable, just the second highest. But, just something to consider moving forward. But in terms of the future, the outlook of Wi-Fi 7, unfortunately, I guess, Apple is kind of the driving force here in the States. So them adopting Wi-Fi 7 now, I'd say almost early, is a good thing for other devices to make that change as well. There's a lot of other devices that can take advantage of this technology. But as far as in the home, not quite there yet. I think the Wi-Fi 7, the advantage is going to be more in, well, let's get the next slide. The AP adoption. Who's going to be using this, right? Of course, retailers, we've already seen this on the market. They've been out for over a year, I believe, off the shelf. But again, not fully featured. I've seen a lot of those devices that don't have MLO support, which is one of the key features with Wi-Fi 7. But we are seeing those larger scale operators that are adopting Wi-Fi 7, promising those Wi-Fi 7 speeds, throughout the home. But the other operators, we're going to see more, I'd say, telehealth, virtual learning, things like that, where those congestion issues are of a concern, and Wi-Fi 7 will help alleviate that. But I feel now Wi-Fi 7 at this point should be mainstream. It's out there, it's available. And that's a wonderful question, right? What do I choose? What do I wait for? I think it's a combination of your subscriber base and what you're willing to support and offer to them. There's a variety of factors, but as we see more and more adoption on the client side, it's going to become more important to take a look at and possibly deploy Wi-Fi 7 solutions. Okay. With that, we'll do the second poll, please.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. And yes, we've now come to our second poll, and we'd like to ask you, are you currently using a remote management solution? This time, just select one of the options. So yes, we are currently using a TR069 remote management solution. Yes, we're currently using an open source cloud management solution. No, we're still exploring remote management options, or no, we do not plan on using a remote management solution. So just before we go on and Andrew talks about management solutions, I'll give you a few moments to make your selection on this second poll. We've got some results coming in, so I'll just give you a few more moments to do that. Okay. Most of you have now voted. So with that, let's go to the results, which should be coming up on the screen now. There we go. So we've got 45% roughly saying yes, we're currently using the TR069, 17% using open source, 28% not exploring remote management options, and 8.6% not planning to use a remote management solution. Sorry, 28%. No, we're not. We are still exploring remote management options. Sorry about that. So, Andrew, is that sort of typical of what you're seeing at the moment from your customers?
Absolutely. I mean, TR069 is the industry standard for a reason, right? I mean, for the most part, that's what we're seeing people stick with, and hopefully expand upon, which I'll talk about in a moment. But we are seeing that emergence as well on the open source side of things, more cloud managed and, you know, AI analytics, things like that.
Okay, great. And just to say thank you for those who've already sent in questions. We've got some good questions to go to at the end. But please do send any other questions you've got for Andrew. And at that point, I'll hand back to Andrew, and then hopefully we'll have some good time for those questions.
All right. Okay, so now that we've talked about the technologies, of course, will any router do? Of course not. You need a Zyxel router. No, but really, obviously, any router will get you connected on the internet, online, things like that. But as service providers, you want to be able to manage and support your subscribers if you're able to, right? And that's what we'll get into a bit here is, manage Wi-Fi and managing your subscribers in their home. Again, so they have a good experience and don't have to bother calling about any issues, right? Okay, so troubleshooting the unknown. When it comes to Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7, the good news is, nothing really changes. It's still wireless. It's just a new spectrum that we're operating on. So we still have a network name, a password, things like that. Obviously, we have newer wireless security, WPA3, when it comes to Wi-Fi 6E and 7, just keeping it safer. But, we're still going to sort of run into some of the similar issues that we already do with Wi-Fi 5 and 6, especially when it comes to the average user onboarding a new device, adding parental controls, issues with connection, these are the typical things that we run into when deploying Wi-Fi. And that's where we have, our TR069 or cloud managed solutions to be able to do everything remotely. Save time, save money, managing devices with TR069 so that we don't have to truck roll, so that we can instantly take a look into the subscriber's network to determine if there's a problem, to variety of things. There's also potential there to upsell if there's, an area of their home that is impacted with coverage. We can offer them an extender, things like that. So definite benefits when it comes to the industry standard TR069. And what we commonly refer to as an auto configuration server or ACS, we are seeing that transition to, not being hosted locally anymore. So kind of offloading those costs so you're not having to upgrade and maintain servers, where a lot of the ACSs and those instances are now stored in the cloud so that they can be accessed from anywhere. And of course, you can do what you need to do quickly and efficiently. So on the flip side of that, we are seeing an emergence of more of non-standard, let's say, more open source, cloud managed solutions that are coming to market, offering a variety of analytics, proactive, reactive, things like that, to be able to improve the experience again and ensure that there's no issues on that subscriber network. So, we have that industry standard side that's available, that's tried and true, and then we have the open source that is coming to market. That's giving you a whole lot more to work with, a lot more data that's being captured. Communication is more efficient. That is one thing that is lacking with traditional TR069, is that it is a bit cumbersome in communicating, asking for something, waiting for it, acknowledging it, a lot of back and forth communication, which is not an issue when we look at cloud solutions. But as we've talked about the evolution of Wi-Fi, things like that, the industry standard side of things is also evolving. So that's where we see TR369 come about, which is building on top of the TR069 data model, but making improvements so that it doesn't take so long to collect data. We have real-time capabilities, communication, we can have multiple servers, There's a variety of things that TR369 is going to bring us, and it's going to go a long way in kind of future-proofing the way we manage these devices. The nice thing here as well is TR369 is a standard, so it is standards-based, so all vendors that participate and utilize this technology, we'll be able to work together with each other. And that goes a long way in not getting locked into a specific vendor, things like that. So TR369 again, a lot of it had to do with the messaging, where it was I need this information, you'll have to wait for it to come back, get a response, and there's that acknowledgement that goes back and forth. With TR369, everything's always on, always connected, always communicating. It's just using a much better communication technology so that it doesn't impact the devices as much. With TR069, we're using HTTP, HTTPS communication, which can get very lengthy and can bring down or slow down the routers that it's communicating with. If you're asking for too much information, things like that. With TR369, we've improved that using better messaging so that we don't have to worry about those types of things impacting the resources on the routers. And that's going a long way in moving forward. And like I mentioned as well, with TR369, we have different ways to capture data. So we can have multiple servers. If you have just one server to manage devices, one server to collect data from the devices, it gives us a lot more flexibility when it comes to communicating with the subscriber devices that are deployed in the field. All right. With that, I think we'll wrap it up with Q&A.
Great, thanks very much, Andrew. And you zoomed through those last few slides fairly quickly, so we can get on to the questions. And we've actually got some really good questions. I'm going to start with this one, which is around multi-link operation. So two questions actually around how flexible it is, I guess. So firstly, does it work in the uplink as well as the downlink? And the other question is, what is the role of device transmit power in MLO? And it's quite a long question, but essentially, is it able to dynamically change the use of 2.4 gigahertz, 5 and 6 to optimize the power usage, minimize the power usage, I guess, particularly as the phone is moved within the area. Obviously, it can move within to an area of weaker coverage, for example.
That's the ideal concept, yes. In practice, I think that's still yet to be determined. It's really going to be dependent on those client devices in terms of what they're going to be capable of actually doing. Again, on paper, yes, that is the goal, to be able to do that dynamically, seamlessly, in both directions as well. But I think a lot of that is we're still in kind of a wait and see. I mean, I know if there's certain devices that may be able to do it now. I believe it's the Intel-based chips that have that capability. But is it going to move to the mobile phones? And there's so many variations that are going to be a concern with the chipset, the phone manufacturer. There's going to be a lot. The operating system. So it's still yet to be seen. But overall, yes, that is the goal.
Okay, great. So this next question is in terms of Wi-Fi 7. So what would be the realistic distance the device would have to be from a Wi-Fi 7 AP to use 4K QAM? This feels like a feat, or maybe in the same room with no obstructions.
That is still a challenge, yes, and that is pretty spot on in terms of what we need to do now to be able to achieve that kind of unobstructed in the same room next to the router, things like that. But this is something that is also evolving and something that is going to be improved upon, hopefully in the future, especially when we can go full power with the 6 gigahertz band.
Okay, now you talked quite a lot about 2.4 and 5 and 6 and the extra bandwidth and facilities that are available with 5 and 6 gigahertz. And the question here is around IoT. So when do you see IoT devices moving away from the 2.4 gigahertz and moving to 5 or even 6? And by IoT, they mean smart switches and plugs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really dependent on how many devices are on the network, how many devices are on the 2.4, 5, or 6. I think the plugs are static devices, right? So I think that's what that's referring to, something that's statically, that doesn't move. So typically, I mean, once that's set on the 2.4, it's not going to move away from it, because it's not mobile. But with smartwatches, I mean, it really depends on what else is on the network.
I think this is maybe talking about whether devices are going to be available with other than 2.4 gigahertz. So I think by plugs, they're talking about maybe smart plugs that are controlling lights or whatever, which they're typically on the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. Do you see any of those moving towards 5 gigahertz or 6 gigahertz?
Oh, yes. I mean, I don't see why. I mean, the biggest, I think, driver for that is going to be cost. It's more cost effective to just use 2.4 gigahertz, right? Instead of adding a dual band wireless chip in there that can support the 5 or 6 gigahertz. But obviously with Wi-Fi 7 now, I mean, that's going to drive pricing for the legacy chips lower. So there definitely is potential that, we could see dual band capable IoT devices in the market. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So this next question came in fairly early. So if a consumer was doing a video call at the end of the daisy chained extender deployment, wouldn't the latency be a problem at that point? Or is there something in the new standards that minimizes that impact?
So yes and no. There are improvements definitely in the daisy chain to improve that best route back. But overall, I mean, it just is what it is when it comes to adding extenders. I mean, you are adding a layer of latency each time you add an extender. It's just now with Wi-Fi 6, there's improvements in the overall technology to minimize latency. So we're kind of offsetting it there. But generally, I mean, yes, there is going to be some impact, definitely.
Okay. Another question here. So, I think this may be a more general question about different wireless technologies. So how will you combine 5G Advanced with Wi-Fi 7? So I think maybe thinking about how they might work together, or whether they'll stay completely separate. But how do you see that being supported?
I think they complement each other. 5G Advanced offering higher throughput, right? And that's the goal with Wi-Fi 7 as well. So I believe they'd be complementary, not necessarily, combining them, absolutely, sure, no problem.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've just about run out of time. So thank you very much for listening today. And thank you also to Andrew from Zyxel Communications for your insightful presentation there. And thank you to everyone for staying, and have a great day.
Thank you.